Hello! This video presentation is called Modern Acoustic Guitar Recording Considerations. My name is Dr. Justin Hoke, and I am the Music Technology Degree Coordinator at UNC Wilmington, and that's in North Carolina in the United States. And I'm also the guitar professor here, and I've been playing guitar my whole life. And I've been recording guitar ever since I can remember, and I would like to share some of my observations and things that I think are important to be aware of anytime you're considering recording an acoustic guitar. So this is specifically about acoustic guitars. I want to get started by listening to some examples that I've recorded. But before I do that, just a quick overview of the two main types of acoustic guitars. Over here I have a steel string acoustic guitar, and I've used this one in the listening demonstrations that you're going to hear in just a little bit. And the other guitar I have here is a nylon-string guitar, or classical style guitar. The main differences being the materials of these strings. The nylon string guitar has nylon treble strings, and the steel string acoustic guitar has steel treble strings. And obviously, I don't want to give you any preconceived ideas of where to place microphones and how to record the guitar and the different sweet spots on the instrument yet. I want you to decide for yourself and listen for yourself. But obviously, just the steel string guitar, you'll notice, if you're not aware already, has a much brighter sound than compared to the nylon string guitar, which you would, I suppose, typically play fingerstyle, and I have in the listening examples. So in the listening examples, you're going to hear both of these acoustic guitars with the same microphone configurations. So a much more mellow, warm sound from those nylon strings, and simply just the fact that plucking with the fingers and fingernails versus a pick is going to sound warmer anyways. There are other differences, of course, but those are the main ones. So let me talk to you about the listening examples, and then we will give them a listen. So you're going to hear both of these guitars, and the first set of examples are 5 different positions of just one microphone, and it's kind of a demonstration of how the different parts of the instruments sound different from a tonal perspective, or color, or timbre, however you want to describe it. So I have just one microphone, a small diaphragm condenser, and it's about 18 centimeters away from the front of the guitar, and every position is in line with the fingerboard here. And so the first position is at the 5th fret, then the next one you'll hear is at the 12th fret, and then right over the sound hole, and then right over the bridge. Then the 5th example is pointing down, in line at the same height of the player's ear, but about, again, 18 centimeters away from the ear and in front and to the right. So then there are 2 more mic configurations they're stereo mic configurations, and they're 2 of my personal favorites for recording solo guitar in stereo. And so the first configuration is, and by the way, on that segment of 5 different mic placements, I'm using, just so that you know, a Schoeps. This is the cardioid polar pattern, the MK4, which is a very, neutral microphone, not a whole lot of color to it. And it's running into a Zoom F6 field recorder, which again, it has fairly uncolored preamps and clean preamps. So that is that's the signal flow for these for that first segment. Now the stereo, going back to the stereo examples, the first one, I have two of these Sheps, cardioid, polar pattern, small diaphragm condenser mics, and they're a little bit further away, maybe about 35 centimeters, and one is pointing towards the bridge of the instrument, and it's pointing a little bit in and up towards this part of the bridge, so the lower section of the bridge. And then the other microphone is the same distance away, ideally, to avoid phase problems. And it is, so about 35 centimeters away, and it's pointing towards the 12th fret right here in the middle, but angled in just a little bit. So both mics are angled in towards the instrument. And then the last listening example, you're going to hear a pair. It's another stereo configuration. It's a pair of omnidirectional microphones, and it's the KM183 Neumann KM183 microphones, and they're placed in an AB spacing, AB pair, just like the cardioid configuration I just described, but these are omnidirectional, and you'll see in the video they're fairly straight. Some people like to put them off axis, but with guitar I don't really think that that's necessary. These are a hair bright. They're a bit more bright than the Sheps, and for better or worse, but it's something to be aware of. And the distance between the mics, they are spaced at about 2 feet, which is roughly 60 centimeters apart. And the distance of the microphones from me playing guitar is about 1.5 meters away. So before I tell you what I think about these, let's give them a listen. talk about the places of the guitar and how the guitar resonates, and how placing a microphone in different areas might give you different results. So both of these guitars they're going to be similar in terms of that first set of 5 positions where we just had one microphone. You probably noticed that the configuration towards the 5th fret was very bright, not a lot of bass, maybe a little bit thin. And then once we got to the 12th fret, it was also nice and clear, but not quite as bassy or boomy as maybe the other parts of the guitar. So in general, placing a microphone towards the fingerboard or towards the fretboard will give you more treble frequencies, more higher frequencies. And you can use that to your advantage, especially in like a lot of pop music where maybe you have a steel string guitar, strumming chords. You don't want all those low frequencies kind of muddying up your mix. And I know some mixing engineers in the pop world will just, high pass the guitars so that they don't interfere with, some of the more prominent like vocals or, bass, whatever it might be in the low mids. And so instead of using an EQ to high pass the guitar, it's probably better just to think about where your placement is to avoid some of those lower, boomier frequencies on the instrument, because it can be a problematic instrument for sure. And so then my least favorite place for miking guitar, and this is, I hesitate to say don't do something because anything's possible, and especially with great microphones, I mean, you can almost make just about anything work. But a lot of people think the sound hole is a good place to put a microphone, especially for like live sound and amplifying the guitar with a microphone. Just don't do it, especially if the microphone is really close. Sure, if you give it more space, it won't be as problematic. But what happens is the guitar is really boomy and woofy, and a lot of the, upper bass, low mid frequencies will just pop out in a really uncontrolled way. And so it's not as balanced. It's certainly not as clear. It's muddy. It's not my favorite place to point a microphone. And however, near the bridge, actually most engineers see this as the center of the sound of the guitar. It's where the strings make contact with the top of the guitar, and it's the top piece of wood that resonates that gives you the sound of the instrument. And so really, if you're going to live sound and putting a microphone in front of a guitar to amplify it, which is something that I've had to do a lot playing concertos with orchestras on my nylon-string, it's much better to place a microphone if it's going to have to be close and you need a lot of gain before feedback. Place it towards the bridge. You're going to get a lot of volume, but it's not going to be as woofy and crazy and uncontrolled like pointing in the sound hole. So the bridge is not a bad place to point a microphone for a guitar. It's usually fairly balanced and it's pretty loud. So if that's what you're going for, that's not a bad place to be. Now, the 5th arrangement was in line with the player's ear pointing down. And this is a more, modern trend that's been happening, and it can produce nice results. One of the rationale, or a rationale for doing that is, from a player's perspective, you're hearing yourself from this position. And so anything that you alter with your playing, tone-wise, maybe you want a brighter sound or more mellow sound, you make those adjustments based on what you're hearing here. So if you are engineering a session for another player and you want them to have the impression that they're hearing exactly the way in the recording that they hear it when they play, then that could be a reasonable placement. It might sound just a little bit more distant, maybe not as direct, but it has some nice clarity there, typically. and maybe not as boomy as pointing near directly into the top of the body. And then talking about the two stereo mic configurations. So let me clarify, putting the microphone there, it's not like I like every single one of those positions, obviously. It's just a demonstration of how the tone of the guitar can change based on where you put your microphone. So if I'm ever recording acoustic guitar and maybe I want a stereo representation of the instrument, and I want it to be relatively close mic'd, maybe a more popular style of guitar. Maybe it's steel string and a solo arrangement, or a duo, or a singer-songwriter type of thing. Then I really like that combination of pointing one microphone in towards this part of the bridge, and then the other microphone towards the 12th fret. For solo guitar, I don't like the 12th fret by itself. It's just a little bit too lacking. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get some nice, full, meaty sounds from the bridge, and you also get some nice clarity, airiness from miking at that 12th fret, and you get this nice stereo width that really captures the entire instrument. And then the last listening example of the Omni mics in an A-B configuration, that is pretty much the standard miking technique for many classical guitar engineers. And it gives a nice spatial representation of your space. And in this case, we're in a nice recital hall. It has a nice natural reverb. And so using an omnidirectional microphone makes sense because you capture more of the sound of the hall. And as a professional classical guitar engineer, you ideally maybe don't want to add a reverb plugin or hardware processor of your choice. You want the most natural, unadulterated sound you can find. And having the microphones a little bit further back, yes, gives you the sound of the hall, but it also helps balance the sound of the instrument and capture it as a whole a little bit better and a little bit more evenly. So you kind of avoid some of those weird, frequency anomalies where especially expensive instruments, I hate to say it, sometimes expensive guitars in the acoustic world are really loud, but they're loud on certain notes and not as loud on others. I mean, ideally, the perfect guitar would be balanced in every single note, but it's not always the case. And so giving a little bit more distance is usually a good idea. So then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is immersive audio in acoustic guitar. Starting to see it more and more, and I like to think of it in sort of two different worlds. The first world of immersive guitar is kind of similar to this whole classical guitar engineering philosophy where you want to capture the ambience of a space really well. And so my favorite, arrangements for that kind of are built around expanding the A-B Omni setup. That was that last listening example. Except you add a center channel, kind of like a Decca tree, and most Atmos recording engineers, all of these different arrays, which it's mind-boggling how many arrays are out there, and approaches. But I tend to like, just having an A-B Omni for your left and right, and then having another microphone, could be cardioid or Omni, in your center, but I don't like the center mic to be too far in front. A lot of times with Decca trees, you might have the center mic really far ahead, especially if it's recording something like an orchestra. But with solo guitar, it's really best because any kind of delay difference and arrival time of the microphones can just make it sound not so natural for those center speakers that you'll hear it coming from. So keeping the center mic relatively in front, but not too far in front. I don't know, maybe 20 centimeters in front of your left and right microphones. And then for the surround mics, yes, using a pair of microphones for your surround. They could be cardioid or omni, pointing out. And then your rear surrounds, same thing. So that would be 4 extra mics for the side, and surround side and rear, and then an extra mic for the center. And then 4 overhead mics. And, you know, I like to keep things simple. I like the square, the IRT square, and having 4 microphones the same height, but they're pointing in 4 different corners. So that's one aspect of Atmos and immersive in guitar music. The other aspect is a bit more, free, and it's less about trying to have a microphone for each bed or each speaker or object in your Atmos mix, but it would involve and require, maybe it's a pop song where you have a ton of instrumentation and you have a guitar that you've recorded, and you could simply just record the guitar with 1 microphone, but then through the Atmos production suite, decide where you want to pan it in your object or bed or whatever you decide. And that can really kind of open up the doors to creativity and how you present a mix. So that's my take on immersive. Is it worth it? Yes. Binaural renderings, it's not there yet, but if you have the gear and you have a nice space to record in, do it. So thank you for taking the time and for listening. That is the end of this presentation, and hopefully this inspires you to record some guitar.